All right, so we're going to do a balancing restorative sequence today. So I want you to have your 2 blankets at the back, a bolster center, sit on a block in front of your bolster. So your block is flat because who would want to sit on a block that's pointed up? And you're not required to balance on the block for more than a second here. But I want you to notice if you're near wall space, since we'll use some wall towards the middle to the end of the session today, I want you to adjust so that when you lie back, you're not feet pushing the wall, but they could be touching the wall. So when you lower onto your back, you have both the block and the bolster supporting this midsection. So it's as if the pelvis, the ribs, and then the feet, I just barely got that perfect pattern of touch the wall. So that's about what you want. You don't want your knees to bend. Lower your head back to your blankets. You don't want your knees to bend so much that it starts to kind of push up into your upper spines. So just be a little cautious of how close you are to the wall. It's probably better if you were to choose not to touch the wall, it would be just fine, just fine. So you either touch it a little bit or you have no wall touch. So sand will be on the thigh lids. Adjust the weight of circulation into your spine. So you've got this elevating factor of your bolster and your block. And I don't think you notice that after a few moments. You might notice your back is not quite relaxed, right? That's part of this issue in the tissues for this position. So if that's happening considerably here, you might bend your knees for the next minute or two before we kind of steady into these shapes on our back. That's fine. Bent knees or straight legs, either one. Let your arms flow open. And then sense the height under your head that is working for your spine. So you might even close your eyes here. I'm assuming you will. And, feel what the experience is with your neck. As you breathe and glide your mental perspective into the shape, feel if your head is quite lifted or you feel like it's rounding at your neck and you're comfortable with one less blanket, you might try it. You can always put it back on and just feel what is the best path for you for the next few moments, the next couple minutes, making sure you're comfortable. So if 2 blankets is cozy, then just go with 2. If 1 is okay, lower it down. We just don't want to be increasing that roundedness of our neck. If it feels really cozy for you and you need that, use it for the beginning. With this chest moving with the breath, feel if it's kind of a slender path of breath. It might feel like you're adjusting, trying with your feet. Just let your feet relax, whether your knees are bending or your legs are extending. And move the awareness into your rib cage, exercising that upper respiratory tree. So the ribs, the lungs, the bronchial tubes. So as you inhale, filter the air in through your nose. And then exhale out of the mouth. And maybe notice if the pathway of exhale feels like there's any movement created. If you're pretty much kind of fully stretched along the mid-body, it might not have a lot of movement when your body is this long with your breath. You might just feel the inhale primarily. So take about another 5 to 10 in and out breaths. Feel the abdomen relax with the breath. The nice thing here is that we're kind of correcting pattern in the hips and the ribs. So it's like we're trying to find a balance position for both right and left side before we kind of go on to each side working, right? One position with the balancing in the beginning. If your legs are straight, actually, even if your knees are bending, see if you can separate the spacing of them. And then notice if your midsection kind of falls further into one side or the other. So if you tend to lean even with the leg, the back of the knee more on one side when your legs separate a bit, you might bring them back in just a little so that you're balanced. The wall is nice because I can feel kind of that pushes balance into my bones. So I like kind of pushing with the feet, energizing inside. Don't get quite so sleepy. And if you have sand on the thighs, slide it away. And then we're going to bring the knees to bending. And I want you to let the back muscles kind of start to settle so that you have one blanket under your head. So if you already went down to the one, now you're ready to have the change of the bolster. So first things first, we run our blanket down to one under our head. And then I think you could just leave the block where it's at, but you'll walk the feet out wide, easier on the knees. And then I let my body weight slide back so it's actually stretching into my neck. And then I push down to my feet to lift my hips up, and then just ever so slightly to start, move your bolster a little bit lower on the back of your waist until it's right at the very upper rim of the back of your pelvis. I don't want you to push the bolster too far down. If it's too far down, it's harder to get it back up versus if you need to push it down after you attempt to lift your feet off the ground. So first thing, we lift up the feet, lift up so that the knees are in that bending position, and then just kind of get a feel. Just once you get your ball or your block, you place it between the knees, arms move open, straight out a little lower than shoulder height. So it's moving the circulation into your abdomen, into your hips, and then the knees go side to side. Simple. So centering from our beginning pattern, moving into our hip pattern, letting the knees go side to side with that circulation balance from your back, pelvis. I mean, most of us kind of have an orientation of our pelvis, but we don't necessarily associate with back, side, front. So that's what we'll work on that a bit today. Just connecting to finding your center of gravity. So as the knees go side to side, see if you can let the pace of movement feel it's cooperating with your breath. So inhale, center, exhale to the side. So it's kind of a fast breath pace, right? It's a little quick. You could even go faster if you're feeling like that, but you want to find that you can slow it down with the breath. Not so much the momentum of muscles, because we can just kind of go all over the place with our movement and not connect with the breath. That's that's our daily experience often. So if you feel like you're going center, stop, and then over, that's okay. It'll glide together if your muscles can kind of move with the balance across. And if you need to take a still point and shift your bolster down, that's okay. Good. So take a few more moments side to side. Maybe close your eyes and connect to breathing. And if you slow down and kind of keep the breath going, but don't have a discipline of it, that might be interesting for you as well. So next time you come into center, assuming many of you have the ball, we don't have to take a poll, but I want you to squeeze into the ball. Now, if you don't have one and you're using a block, it won't really make as much sense for this one. You want something that you can kind of push into, even if it was like like even a roll of toilet paper, something that actually would respond, or a blanket. You could use, a towel that you could push into, but the block doesn't really have any give to it, right? It resists the whole time, it doesn't change. So when you bring the knees in, the thigh muscles squeezing into the ball, take a moment and feel that you want the knees positioned up from the hip point, right up from the bolster, so it doesn't cause as much distraction in the hip flexors. And then knees to the chest. Take the ball away, reach around to get your belt. Okay. It's nearby, I hope. Okay, and so as we move our knees to point up and we have our belt, we're going to also have our sandbag nearby. And scoop up your foot, your right foot with your belt. So you've got a big loop. This is where I kind of like this block below the bolster because it sort of supports my leg. But when we get to the other side, you might have to nudge it over, depending on where your block ended up. Maybe you moved it, I don't know. But as we get the belt under the right foot, you're going to take your sand to the front of the left thigh. Okay. And it could be lengthwise, it could be kind of pivoting. Probably your best maneuver is to make sure that sack is kind of bulky in the front of the thigh lid. Not necessarily up at the belly, but it might feel like it's a little low belly. And then once you have the belt, make sure that the connection is long enough, but not too long, so that you can place the belt. See where you're at here. Reach the belt to the occiput. Okay, that's too tight. And you want to make sure that the length of it gives you an opportunity to both relax back into the belt. Okay. And then also the ability for the leg to stretch and to push into the belt. So if it's completely pushing the leg back and it's too tight, then you might find you're not able to relax in the position. So if your belt's twisted up behind your head, that's not good either. So you want to make sure that you have a pretty good connection here. My belt's all over the place. It's not quite agreeing with keeping the tail of it out of my eyes. Okay, so feel, how does the bolster feel under your back? Do you need it lower, higher? If your back is uncomfortable, it's likely the bolster needs to be higher. And that's something to know for the spine care. Okay, and then if your left leg moves a little bit out, that's fine. Don't get so central with having the foot perfectly, the toes up. See if you can just ignore that factor for a moment and emphasize the circulation for your neck, the relaxation of the shoulders, and the awareness of the back of the right leg. Yeah, even those of us that are pretty flexible with this type of pose for the hamstring can get something out of having the leg upside down, reversing the flow of gravity back into the vital organs. Also, the calves get some nice kind of drainage in this position. So resting the eyes, opening up through the back, like the neck. And you can't really say that you open up your brain with this position because that's silly, but it does pull at the back of our head and get some nice specific space at the brainstem. And you can believe whatever you want about it, but noticing what works for you. So everyone makes adjustments, whether the belt needs to loosen, tighten. Maybe you don't like having the belt behind your head. So here's a variation you could try if you don't like that. With the legs still up, you could have your hands get a hold of the belt around the webbing between the thumb and the index, and then send the arms straight back, holding on to that belt pretty easily. And that is nice for the shoulders, for the ribs. I like both variations, brain, occiput with the belt under the head, and also this one. I like them both. I don't think one over the other either. This one you can kind of study the sensation of the leg. Okay, those of you that are visiting both poses, go for it. And those that want to stay with the brain, float away. Breathe slow. And emphasize the exhalation. This is a pretty compact position for the face, the facial muscles, so the breath is rather easeful. Okay, now let's give a try for gradually getting to the second leg. So if you have your hands holding the belt, it will be easier because you just nudge off the sand and then shift the foot in the belt. And those of us with the brain float, you give a few moments to keep the belt behind your head, slide the sand away. I just put it on the bolster on the other side. And then as I start to slide my left foot in, I kind of like to push into the belt and then lift the left foot up and bring my hands behind my head so no accidents happen with the belt. And then slide that foot out and change it for the other foot into the belt. So as you get that momentum of the second leg, it's likely not as warmed up as the first leg, right? So it could be surprising how the calf or the hamstring respond. We'll give it some time. If having the right leg straight for you during this process doesn't work, that's another variation you could do, is have the right knee bending the whole time. I just thought about that on the second round, second side. Okay, first round, second side. So sand onto the right leg if possible. You could still bend your right knee and have your sand on your leg, okay? And I'm nowhere near the wall at this point. I've lost that ability. But if you were near the wall and you touched the wall with your foot, that would be actually very good. I just have not been able to find my wall with my foot here. I'm not willing to adjust my bolster, I guess. But you might do that so you get the most perfect pose. Now, if your hamstring on that left leg, you feel that it's straight up and down, all right? You might feel that this space behind the knee is opening up. And those of us that can have hyperextending experiences, this one might be pretty safe here for the straight leg. Yeah, but be a little cautious if by chance you're not sure. You can orient the knee to a micro bend by giving that direction of the leg lifted and your head back into the belt or into the hands. All right, so if you're using your hands in the belt, that's fine. So it's in that web space between the thumb and the index, or it's, I guess, at the brain web. That's the other option, right? The occiput. So that's a nice kind of line around the back of your head, the occipital bone. A few more moments. Let's get equal time on the second side. Relaxing the breath. If you're not comfortable with your head and the neck hitting the stretch, remember you can use the belt in your hands. No problem. Now, with the timing on this side, we're going to add on something. So if you have your belt, whether it's behind head or at hands, let's all just move to shift the sand off the leg. And then as you reach your hands to get a hold of your belt, make sure it's off of your head now. And feel when the pull of the belt is with both hands. You got to be careful not to do this too long because we're going to go right into the lateral part of our leg. So the most focus here is that I take the belt sides together and hold on to it with the right hand. Yeah, so you have just a crossover. Reach with your right hand to the belt, and then let the left leg, which is in the belt, the left foot, crosses to the right side, and feel when it goes over your different directions. You can move the heel a little bit downwards once the leg is still straight-ish and it's to the right. You could shift the foot so it moves a little bit down. You could shift it so it goes straight across. I don't think we're going to be pulling our leg up to our shoulder. So that is the other option, but it doesn't seem like it would be the most respectful for our lower backs, okay? Unless we're trying to do some acrobatic feats today. But get a feel for that reach. So this lateral, this is like the bone structure has this pull, so it's resistance. But I also want you to kind of just let yourself be a little fussy with it. You can bend your leg, straighten your leg, or almost straight. Just kind of feel. Some people might have a little bit of popping pattern, a little bit of maneuvering through the cycle of the knee to the hip. Could occur, right? It probably goes away. But if you continue to notice that, see if you can kind of give yourself a little slack on the grip of the belt so that it guides to the right side and it goes either straight across or it goes a little downstream. Okay. Now you're going to move that left knee to bending. So really take a strong bend and then shift. So bring it back to center. I know it's pretty simple. Right foot comes up into the belt and left leg stretches straight down. Relax the left foot. Hold the belt together with the left hand and cross it in. And instead of having a eye perspective, like you're not just necessarily you yourself, but your eyes perceiving where to go, feel if you can kind of get out of vision focus. I mean, that's something that's kind of good to do anyway, to just feel from your inside without looking where your foot goes. And take the right leg over to the left using your left hand to supply support. And you're guiding it, but only with acceptance in the hip. So if I kind of pull it to the left, the leg, and then my right thigh seems to feel resistant, well, it is going to feel resistant, but if it feels like it's too much pull, remember you can go downstream with the right foot. It kind of goes to the left and then it pushes down kitty corner. The leg should be somewhat straight. If you do a little micro bend, it's fine, but just don't do a big deep bend with the knee. Right arm is open. In a few more moments. Yeah, and if you like to really get into that hip and the thigh stretch and you're pulling it to the left side deeply, just see if you can lax off so it's not so, not that I'm saying anybody's doing that at all, but see if you can find that you're maneuvering the blood flow around the right hip. And that you can breathe. If you can breathe, you're on a good path here with the pose. And now the extremities get to balance. Now, so bring the right knee back center, the leg up, and then stretch the left foot up into the belt. And I would take this one so you hold your belt, because we've established that that focus on how we've been using the belt recently. We've kind of held on to it with either our hand or our head. And so we'll keep that right now. So pull. Now your feet can go as to a width. So my foot, my leg width is the width on my foot width. And so when I move my legs in that external rotation, kind of get a feel for the stretch in the leg, but also the circulation at the top of the leg into the pelvis. Relax your abdomen. Just let the legs have this wide angle. And now if you want to let the legs go out a little farther, that's up to you. But you have a limit because you're holding onto the belt. You can always loosen the belt so that you have more room to grow. That's probably a good idea for this one. Okay, but we're finding that balance at the groins. This is big idea here for where we're going. So the adductors, the groins. So when you feel that movement of the feet apart, take it to your, I would say kind of somewhat maximum, not so much that it's shaking, but find where that you have a maximum stretch here. It's upside down, so it's a little easier for your back muscles. It's easier for your knees, right? Because you're not hyperextending the legs on the ground trying to do this. So I just love this inversion stuff. It's just good for us. Good for our immune system, just good for circulation, right? Internally. And as I bend through the legs, slide the feet together, pull on the belt. So you're trying to pull your belt towards your chest, and then you sort of stop because you can't go past that. And then slide the hands up on the belt. Good. And so the feet just go together. Bend the knees, scoop up the belt and take it over to the side off of the bolster or off the mat as well. And then I want you to simply let the knees go towards the left. This will be kind of a very customized way to get out of this. So we're going to be going towards the wall with your suggested direction. So you're going to move to the left and slide down. Okay, hopefully I'm not entirely off screen here. And move a block behind you over to your blankets and set up for side sage. Okay, so you have this leg kind of direction, it's gone upside down. And now the legs probably feel pretty comfortable to get into this orientation. So let's get our blankets. Let's stack them up. And maybe a block is, maybe you use one over the other side of your blanket. Some of you don't do that, so you don't have to spend energy on the block overhead if you're not going to use it. But as I get the ball on the inside of the right leg and a sandbag, okay, set it on your right side, the sandbag that is, and set the body direction so it lies on the bolster. Now this is one where you get to choose, well, some of you have several bolsters, but you can tell that the bolster is going to emphasize the circulation. So if you do have a round one, you might use that because then the body just kind of morphs into that little bit of lift, and then it moves the ribs, and then it brings more space. Okay, so as the right arm either goes overhead or it goes open, down by the side, or onto your bolster, you choose. And maybe what's important here is to experience the ribs expanding. So as you inhale, filter the air through the nose. Feel the ribs expand. And as you exhale, relax on the out breath. So feel where that alternating pulse occurs in your ribs. And if it moves at all into the shoulders, and that could be your experience of the shoulders, right, that touch towards your back. So if my hand is down and it's not lifted overhead, it's a little easier for me to find comfort with that. When it's reaching, there's a little more detail with the breath. That's in the eye of the beholder, huh? So with a few more cycles of breath, Feel where the body weight is on the bolster. You can tell if you have a higher bolster, that would make a difference. You know, if your ribs are rotating towards ceiling, you're trying to kind of peeling open in the rib cage before you come out of this. That might be nice to do, even if your arm is kind of in this low, lower range. You know, maybe just get a feel. So I find that if I keep turning my head, it's eventually not the best thing in my neck. At first it feels kind of nice, but then I recognize when I connect that could cause a little bit of soreness there. So feel when your right shoulder shifts back, even if you're just moving from the thicker part of your bone structure, not the connection to the arm, but kind of feel the shoulder, like, you know, when you kind of roll your shoulders back, you kind of roll them a little bit, just feel that awareness. So it's in the thicker part of the body, not pushing out the arm. And then we roll down to the left and we come on up, and we're going to set up something in between the two sides to give us perspective in the center piece of the body. Let's just keep our blankets stacked. Take a block if you have one behind you, and then pivot your bolster on top. So it's straight up, so you have a little bit of a lane for your spine. We'll call it spine lane. Okay. Sit in front of your bolster on the ground, so not on top of it. Take a couple blocks under your legs. And then when the feet are together, we're going to add our belt. Okay. Just give something an idea. I don't know if I'll go with it, but first thing, we got our belt connected. If you unbuckled it, buckle it up again. And if it's a big loop, it's kind of easy. You just scoop it over your feet around your ankles and you tighten it up so it goes from the top of my foot around my waist, and then I kind of nudge it so it's just below my waist, right? It's right at the back of the hip. Okay, so when I lower down and I've got my back muscles stretching, right? So my back is in its anterior tilt now. And as I lower back, this could be a little challenging for some of us with no blanket. You might go, well, I'm so used to that. I could tuck the blanket around my contour of my neck. Well, feel if you can be here. You might even use your fingers around the skull, right? So you can kind of feel the curve there into the back of your head. And then get a feel if you can support that kind of a cranial support and settle the center of your head onto that bolster. This is probably not one for a round bolster. So the round bolster might be a little challenging. You kind of roll side to side off of the center of it, huh? Okay, rest your arms low so they're besides your waist. You're sandless unless you need sand. If you're feeling sand deficient, you can put it on your ribs, you can put it on your feet. But feel the lines of balance here. And I like to sometimes notice that the belt has a deeper meaning of threading, of circulation. So I know it's not threading my spine itself, but I can thread that with just the belt around the feet, around the hips. It gives me a base. And then from the hips through the ribs, around my whole kind of atmosphere, right? Halo around my top of my head. And I have that supportive line of energy from the belt. Yeah, the belt has some deeper meaning, I feel, with this pose. So you can go farther with the concept, but stay with the breath. Stretch the belly with the breath. That's easier here than when we started, because it's still stretched out. It's quite lengthened, a lengthening feeling in the front, but it's not quite like our first pose. Not as much pressure in the ribs. Feel if you can adjust the connection of your head. If you can't stand this no blanket policy idea, then you can always take a little break and go get a towel. And that might be just what you need, just a small towel behind your head. Opening the chest. Trusting the gravity will actually be helpful here. Leaning back. I hope that yard work sound is not too much for anybody here. I don't notice anybody complaining about it right now. Just me. And I get the feel when your feet are touching, if you can feel the heel bones primarily, they have a nice kind of seal, right? It's not as if there's a lot of space at the very base of the foot when they touch, but there's space at the arch. Lots of open space. So I want you to keep the belt for a few more moments and spend the energy on kind of studying that line of focus where the belt is around the foot. That's probably one reason why the heels really press. If it's around the top of the foot, then the heels will push in together. So notice when you unbuckle, where is that buckle? Hopefully you can shift the belt off easily. You don't have to get the whole operation off your leg, but just unbuckle it. And then notice, the feet probably open up a little bit. They're not, the heels aren't as dedicated to each other. There's a little bit more wiggle room with the feet. Okay, now with that influence, the legs fall open a little easier. There's less guarding. So let's move the left knee to point up the bottom of the left foot down. And we'll take the right foot and cross it over to the left knee. It's been a while since we've explored this version, so let's take our time. So I think you can be with your ball and take the ball, place it to the outer left leg. If you don't have a ball, use like a sandbag. You could use a block to the outer side of that left leg, but have it at the very top outer side of the leg. So as you lean your body weight into that ball, you can reach for your right knee and stretch the right hip. Okay, you'll feel the hip stretching. Keep it real clean, simple hipped. I've been hipped. Okay, spine will have just this real minor curve right at the very base, real small. So as much as you can let your body rest on the bolster, the better. Again, if you're not having a good time with this lack of blanket, you might really want a little something. That's okay. I'm just trying to educate my neck to avoid rounding forward. I'm trying to give it enough experience so that I can feel that I can move the spine straight up at my neck's line. Okay, so take a few more breaths here. Your right arm could be passive. It could be reaching back if you need an active experience. Can't be still, that happens. Okay, now before you leave the side, feel with the right hand down the possibilities of the breath. Doesn't mean you have to define it and get enthusiastic about breathing deeper, louder, or anything. But just kind of notice, does the breath move? Does it create movement? Or coach yourself to be kind of moving your knee farther to the left? Is there anything it sort of gives you? So try to have the breath help you get grounded, not to get you pushing things around. Okay, now when we switch sides, we just let go of the knee. And mine went pretty far over. It seemed like it was feeling like an expansive stretch in my right leg. So that felt pretty good. So as I uncross and then get to the other side, left foot to the right knee, and I take that ball to the outer upper right leg, I let the body weight lean into the ball. Okay, I don't know if anybody has that perspective. It's hard to see anyone at this range in the screen for you to see how I tilt. But you want to have the thigh so it shifts over. And the side of my right foot is on the ground and not on the bottom of the right foot. So it's a little bit tilty. But my ribs, this is a perspective you can tell, and everyone has this down, I'm sure, but just noticing, especially as you practice on, you know, what you're holding back on. Like, are you trying to get the bottom of your foot down? There's things that you almost don't notice you hold too. And so if you have the side of your foot on the ground, it could feel a little alienating, right? Like you're not pushing on the bottom. So feel, and then hold on to the knee. I forgot that. I was wondering what was missing. It was the hold. So when you grab a hold of your left knee with your right hand, you can get the direction quite specific towards the right with the knee, a little bit towards you with the knee, and the left arm could be passive. So by now you can experience the developing expression of the respiratory system, right, with these poses. We've done a lot for that system, right, just from the beginning until and right now. We're trying to push something under the rib cage. Right, that started in the session and right here, but then the middle, we had the inversions, so that just changes the circulation dynamic. And I give a few moments here of just noticing how the back of your head is on your bolster. Maybe if you let your head nod a little side to side, if you center the back of the skull, get a feel for the direction in that left hip. Now, if you notice the pressure specific into the hip and the side of that left leg, and let the abdomen move with the breath. I mean, all these little manners of minor control of the systems are helpful for operating your body, right? When you start to learn how to operate, how to relax, how to change the nervous system response. Very helpful. Okay, now if I relax my grip on the leg, I still feel a minor stretch. It hasn't gone completely away. But when you let go of that grip, you know, feel what lingering pull is onto your hip and your leg. And then when you come back in center, this kind of eases up the playing field. Just shift the ball aside, uncross through that left leg, and then you might push into both feet and then scoot the hips over to the left or your buttocks to the left, and then roll to the right. Try to let things be real easy going. Use your arms to help you shift to your right hip, and then turn the bolster. The belt's probably in your way here. Move it aside. Turn the bolster to its side, horizontal. Then set up for your side sage with the right hip down next to your bolster. Those of you that use a block, put it overhead. Yeah, those of you that want more blanket under your head, you can always fold it up, the top blanket. And then once you establish, once the length is in that side, again, you might use your other bolster. Now you might be going bolster back and forth here, huh? For the round or the standard flat one. But once you're onto that side, whichever bolster you've chosen to push into is just fine. And lengthen that left side overhead. Now, if this is too much shoulder pressure, if it seems to kind of be congestive shoulder, is what I would think of that. Shoulder congestion. sometimes happens, and be honest with yourself, if you rotate your cuff, these muscles on the side, you start to feel it's just stiffening more. You might be better off with your arm by its side, by your side, or onto the bolster, or let your left arm kind of open the wing a bit. And sometimes less is going to be beneficial here. Unless you really like that reach and it's interesting for your ribs, your breathing, and you can balance your circulation, and it doesn't overstimulate. Yeah, overstimulation for this might mean that you have to focus on the area that you're stretching so deeply you really can't ease the breath up and keep attention other places. If it's all one area, then that's usually too much. Okay, so let's take a few moments here. Left arm is up. It is, it's up. It's whether it's up and it's on your side or it's up overhead, it's up. What's up? Your left arm. Make sure your head is comfortable, even if you're a little bit on the back of it, that's okay. As long as you're not gripping up and you can feel that kind of stem from the brain tightening. That's tricky. We're noticing when your neck is tightening. It's different than a hip or a hamstring. It's a different cycle of pressure. So a few more breaths here. Now, as you lower down the sand away, let's see, the sand could go to the left side if you haven't already moved it. Move it over to the left. And then as I start to shift my left thighs rotated in. So you're going to let your ribs kind of roll into the bolster to the right. And then let your movement of your head, your neck is kind of interesting, right? How does this help my back? So when I kind of lean over to my right leg and I come up sitting on my bolster, take a seat. You might need to shrug your shoulders, shake out your legs in a little tantrum, whatever you need to do. But let's look back to our blankets besides the screen here and pull them in. So you've got two blankets stacked right behind your bolster. It's kind of, there's no space between the two. Then you've got your block. If you've got that, put it over to the side. And let's take our left knee to bend. It's already, some of us, it's already in bend. And then let the left thigh stretch open, the knee stretch open, and the right leg reach out. Okay, so I think, can you see this perspective with the right leg straight? You kind of have an idea of it. Okay. All right, put something under this left knee. I mean, it could be a block, a ball. The ball is just like responsive surface, but it's not that high for some of us. So you might feel that your left foot has to go a little farther forward. Some of us are going to just kind of pull it into the bolster it's on the floor, but we tighten up the leg. So I think you've got to get a feel for yourself how that works. Doesn't mean it's bad for the knee, but there's quite a few conversations in this body practice, whatever practice you're doing. Just how when you pull the foot in, how it kind of tightens up around the side of the knee. Some people have issue with the inside or the side. So I don't think anyone wants to make that have a problem. So I would let your foot maybe be straight across from the knee. Just kind of feel that. If you need to pull it in so you feel more height, just take it slow. Okay, this is still going to stretch your knee a bit, even with it pointed out here. So it stretches part of the knee. Okay, now as you put your sand on that front of the top of the left thigh, then you're going to get a belt. Your right leg might be feeling like it's hyperextending underneath. So what you might do is you could put like a blanket under there, because your blanket won't be that important for a bit. So you can put a wad of something under the knees, but it probably blocks too much because it doesn't mush up. All right, so get your belt unbuckled, and then we're gonna buckle it again, but you're gonna buckle it up. Can't make this noiseless, I don't think. And you'll make a little loop, little bitty, and then scoop up your foot, your right foot, with the loop. I don't know what would happen if I scooped up my left foot. Bring the belt behind you, so you've got lots of belt now. And then hold on to it. So that left arm, now some of us, the shoulder might get a little squeamish on this. So here's the focus with the shoulder, is if my arm is really close to me, it's just keeping the chest open. I don't have to yank on the belt more than just holding ground for the shoulder open, or the chest open, sorry, this open. But those of you that want to move a little further could stretch the arm back. Just be warned, right? So if I move my arm back even a little bit from my body, you'll probably feel it tomorrow. You'll feel a good stretch on the back of the arm, but just find what is the most caution, right, for the hold, and then reach the right hand for the left leg. Yeah, that might be a bit of a challenge. This is why we try to pull our foot closer to the bolster. You'll feel it because your knee's farther out, right? So if I pull my foot closer, it's just a little bit of change, but usually it's enough change I want to do it. So you've got to weigh your options here. I bet you can get your arm quite far over to that knee and really get your back to open up. So my arm, I'm going to put it pretty close to my body just so I don't have any shoulder issues going forward. And then turn to the left. It can happen anyway, but turn to the left for your ribs. Try to feel like you're sitting up and you're rotating. Okay, now try to keep your right hand on that left knee and turn your head forward, just forward. Okay, so my head turns forward. I feel my hold on my belt. Inhale, chest is up. It's a pretty weird position for your directions. And exhale-ish, right? You might be inhaling, exhaling. Turn your head towards the back. Only so far back that it feels okay on your neck. I'm not entirely turning back because I'm not an owl. But feel that turning your head. Okay, breathe. Now reach your right hand for your belt on top of that right leg. So you're going to reach over, get the belt. You can let go with the left hand or just keep it for a little bit of time. And then you'll bend your right elbow. Okay, I'm going to move my how I look, but you keep your look the same. But you're going to move your elbow. That's holding. You still have your leg out. You're going to move your right elbow so it's on the inside of the right leg. So you could still hold back with the belt or let go. I'm just going to let go. And you're going to pull and tilt. So your head turns towards your eyes and your forehead turns towards the right leg. Okay? So this left side waist, this lower waistband, the quadratus lumborum, this area stretches. So I want you to just work with bending, easing, elbow on the inside. Yeah, and you might end up taking your hand away from holding your belt behind you. And just let your left arm still, your hand be behind you. So your head could tilt left, your head could tilt down to the right leg. Either one, left or down. Just give it a few moments here. Breathe. Okay, now manage the pulling. So I want you to feel that you are pulling with your right hand, but also the upper arm on the right arm. So pull, but keep your right shoulder down. So you're not trying to shrug it up. Come up to sitting. And then let's take the belt off that right foot and cross the right leg in front of the left and take both blocks. Okay, simple. Down on the ground, besides your right foot on the foot is on in the middle. It's a little more left than it is center. And then move your sand to the right thigh. Upper, right as high as it'll go. Okay. All right, so it's on the inside of that right leg. Well, it's sort of on the upper inside. And then when you lean forward, feel how the spine has developed its natural, kind of landing pad at the pelvis, and then walk the hands on forward, onto the blocks. And lean forward. It might be barely tilting. Right? Tilt is kind of controlled action, right? Tip would be you kind of fall into it, but I want you to work on tilting. And so that right knee is open, both knees are trying to stay outwards. Give it a few moments. If you want to go farther out and kind of out and forward with the blocks, you may. And you might decide to go closer in and kind of feel that tilt. So, managing this middle kind of whirlwind of control of your abdominal sensation, your back sensation. The back is usually the stiff zone, right? It has a little bit more restriction, and the abdomen kind of just drops with gravity, right? So your work is on trying to get those two to merge their energy a bit, because we like to have some moderation with the tension and then the gravitational kind of drop. So breathing, exhaling. So that focused time, give it a few more moments. Okay, your head might be just like in a natural daily habitual lift. So it might take energy for you to actually let your head tilt a bit here, because you've kind of been programmed that it doesn't do that, huh? Right? You've been a little programmed. So kind of go with what helps you feel the sensation into the top right leg. We can't really deprogram, but noticing, breathing, and then hands come back onto the leg, and then we just let the left leg stretch out. Pretty easy. You take the ball under the right knee, you take the belt. Oh, it's easy peasy here. Scoop up the foot, take the belt behind you, keep everything kind of low so you're not trying to flip it overhead. Just easy does it. Right hand holds the belt. I hold the belt back behind me, so I'm reaching over to the leg with my right hand. And as I turn to the right, then my elbow bends, right? So you kind of notice these things that have to happen for you to get rotation. I know it's even more elaborate than you would want it to become. So rotate to the right, left hand to the right leg. Yeah, I bet your ribs, your waist is learning to, in some way, it sounds like you don't want it to get wider and all that, but it has capacity to kind of reach and expand. It's probably a healthier function for the breathing. So when you get a hold of your knee, hopefully your ball will stay there. Left foot toes up. If the toes turn in, that's definitely no-no. So you want to be a little careful on your left foot to look that the toes are up. And then some of you will pull your belt and kind of stretch the chest muscles a little bit. Some will be a little bit closer in with that right arm. So turn your head to the right. Yeah, get a feel of the movement of the head direction on the spine. Yeah, you can feel the connected layer from the head turning and then the connection back through the trapezius into the shoulder. Right, unfortunately, you can feel quite a bit of things when you study it more, but not always a great thing. Huh? You want to keep that awareness anonymous here. So deciding on where the head turns, take a moment longer. Okay, now get that right arm close to your side and then reach with the left hand down to the belt on top of the left leg. Bend your left elbow. See if you can bring that elbow towards the inside. Now, if you notice, my left side back, the waist is feeling too much pull on one side or the other, you might have an SI joint, kind of a little displacement experience. So what you might do is bend your left knee, like try to really bend it, then bring that left elbow on the inside of that left leg, and then just go from there. Maybe your leg doesn't straighten out. But be a little careful on this waistband side layer, because when I stretch down, I like to feel this side stretch, this right side band. But if it pinches on my left side, it's just not worth it. So it's better to be like real basic, bend your knee, take it easy. Okay, now the right arm stays back for today's perspective. Breathe. I'll think about the yard work outside as being my soundtrack today. The humming sound. Okay, now as you slide that left hand back in center, and then I want you to bring that left foot to take the belt off, bring the left foot crossing. Now I've got my feet so that I could pull them a little closer, but I would be real simple-minded about it. So if you don't feel a lot of stretch in your hip, the closer you bring your feet in, it will feel more stretch. So be kind to your knee joint. So if you move the ball to the left leg and it doesn't really hold, but it works better on your right leg, and on the second side, you might have to stay with some differences on the second side. So lean forwards, reach your hands to your blocks, and then just get a feel here of the spine. All right, we're going to follow up with this with a little bit of standing work. So I want you to really get the nature of the sensation from the hip, kind of threading into the low back muscles. And then if you tilt forward and you decide to move farther down, you can always move your blocks lower. That's one way to go. If it's not hard enough for you, or if you need something more challenging, you just make your blocks go down, you are further into the hip. It's just leverage. Now, as you let the spine continue to strengthen, breathing. Okay, now sliding your hands and your blocks back into center. Let's just come on up and then move the sand away. And we're going to take the ball to the side and we'll turn. Okay, we're going to turn so that we're on hands, knees. You're going to go to your wall space. If you need to completely re-establish your connection to the wall, this is a good time to do that. What I want you to have is a blanket close to underneath your knees. So position so that your props that you have nearby you don't have to have a belt. That can be gone. The belt can be away from your experience now. But you do want to have your bolster on the side. I would put it next to your left side, if you're positioning right now to the left side. Sand on the side, but your block. So you really only have a block set that's in use right now and your blanket under your knees. Okay? All right. So we have our hands and they're centering out and your hips are reaching back. So I want you to lean so that the spine extends. Actually, it's kind of between flexing and extending right now when you tilt back. And then when you move to table, round your back into cat position. So spine flex, inhale into arch. Think about moving your head just front, not necessarily chin up, but head forward. And round your back into flexing. Yeah, see if you can find a nice balance of movement of breath and movement of waist and hips. Now this one you can improve on usually. I'm not saying pointing to anybody to improve, but I find that my connection to my mid-body changes a little day to day with how the organs are functioning or responding to things like digestion and so forth, and my postural habit that day. So, just see if you can use these moments to get your structure to find balance. Okay, we'll keep this real simple. So what we'll go with now is you'll bring your hands, actually let's take it this way. We'll take our blocks on the inside of the mat so they're on the sticky mat so they don't slide away. Bring your knees to touching, actually not your knees, but your thighs close together, and left foot steps forward, and it's sort of between the blocks. It depends on your leg length, I'm assuming, but when I kind of move my weight into my hands on this position, like I'm pushing into my blocks. So feel how you start to go from that low lunge to stretch the front of the back thigh. And then I would encourage you to put your blocks up to the highest setting and make sure they're far enough forward that you don't trip over them. Lift up your back knee. Don't trip over your blocks. And then feel, this is interesting with the wall, because if I push back, I will straighten the leg, but I want you to adjust so your heel is it kind of, if you have a little baseboard, it's excellent because you just adjust it at the top. I know you got to get your wall space so there's nothing that'll give you splinters or anything. Okay, so adjust so the left knee reaches forward. Okay, now adjust so that your right heel lowers towards the floor. Be careful on the blocks, right? We don't want to fumble over. So try to get your right heel towards the ground. You can step your feet a little farther apart so it's easier to get your heel towards the ground. And you might be surprised at, if you haven't done many calf stretches the last few days and you've been walking a lot, they can be pretty restricted. Okay. So now we bend through the left knee and we turn to our right. So you're going to take your blocks on the inside of the left leg, turn to the right so you have a wide stance. So take your feet out to a wide stance. Now I'll be a little bit funny on the screen because more of my perspectives to this wall. But when you have your wide stance, I'll look back so it'll be easier to see. But you have a wide stance, be sure that the legs are in the same plane here. So if you look down, if one leg's a little forward and the other, it won't be a great experience for you, even though one foot's at the wall. So I want you to lower your blocks down to the second or the lowest setting, whichever works for your flexibility. And you're moving the hips back, and you can set the blocks farther forward so your focus is outstretched sensation. So reaching with legs, reaching with arms, bending through and letting your head lower down. Okay, now if this is too much in your shoulders, you can have your blocks closer. And stability, hands, palms open, low block, right? So that you have an easier adjustment with your roots of your arms. And then keeping this shape, right? So you can help avoid, some people don't like that, not just for the shoulders, but for the circulation into their brain, right? So this is one version. The other is that outstretched version. Okay. Those of you that are enjoying the outstretched version, make sure the crown of your head is towards the ground. Breathing. Okay, so we're going to take a little twist. So you're going to need some stability and balance for this for a moment. So slide the blocks in. And then take a motion where you scoot your left foot a little closer towards the wall. The foot that's distant is going to move a little in. And you'll bring your hands back to hold on to the legs. So that's the balance beginning. Okay. Now you've got the right foot near the wall. So that's a good kind of springboard. So we'll reach the right hand for the left leg. And we still have the spine stretching. So I hold on to my left leg below the knee, towards the ankle, somewhere between knee and ankle. Reach the left hand to the back, and then just feel a twist through that right side of the waist, right? It's a good one. I like this one. If you really analyze it, it's a pretty agreeable turn for the spine. Now, we don't want our head just to flop, but we don't want to tighten up the neck. So Feel as you turn, breathe, and then come back into center, hold both legs, spine stretch with gravity, left hand to right leg. Now switch sides, good. Below the knee and above the ankle, right hand comes back and turn so you're rotating towards the right leg. Try to get both sitting bones lifting, breathing. Lower the right hand down, get those blocks, and take the blocks over to the left side. And you're going to be a little tipped over with the circulation into your brain. So take a moment because you don't want to have your blood pressure go so low you can't balance. And then turn the back heel up and change. So your right foot steps to your left foot in front. Feet about hips distance. Take a forward bend of choice. Maybe your hands on your blocks, any height will do. Maybe you hold the elbows with your hands, forward bend. You choose. Pull the back of the legs if you prefer. So you have a few options here with the hand version to blocks or to each other, right? They can hold the elbows, they can hold the back of the legs. You know, for some of us, the blood pressure changes too much. That's why some of us will find the blocks under the hands is just better. Right, we just don't get so discombobulated from as we try to come out of the pose. Okay, so you'll be fine with it. So take a few more moments in your forward bend of choice. So now bend through the knees and then take your hands on the blocks and step the left foot back. Now, you probably want your blocks to be high to start because we'll go backwards on this side. You're going to lower your heel, right? So let the heel stretch down towards the base, towards the floor itself. The right leg is bending a bit. It's not straight. So the more I kind of bend through the right leg, it's interesting in the left calf once I bend the right leg. Breathing deep. Now feel where that sensation is through the lower leg. Now lift the heel up at the base of the wall so that you're on the ball of the left foot. And then take a further of a lunge. So you might slide the right foot forward and then lunge. The back knee can go to the blanket. You don't have to keep it up, but you might be okay with maintaining that strength into that right leg. So get a feeling of that circulation through the leg into the front of the left hip. Now lower the left knee down to that blanket. If you don't find that's quality for your knee, then of course you can have it a little bit lifted, or you could kind of stuff in your bolster under it. If it's just the knee touch down, that's too much pressure. You could use the bolster under your thigh as well. Yeah, if that doesn't make any sense, you can slide it in so it's really close, and then you could just lean your leg on it so the knee doesn't touch down. Some of us, that's just better. Take a moment here. Just a moment though. Okay. We got just a couple things to do with our timing here. Okay, now slide back your right foot and then blocks go away. Okay. And I want you to turn. You're going to slide your blanket back to where your hands were there in a moment, and turn onto your back and have your bolster nearby. But I want you to scoot your seat towards the wall and place the ball or block between the knees and do a motion here where your feet step up on the wall, right? And you lift up your hips. And if you don't like the blanket under your head, don't use it, but lift up the hips and then lower down the spine. Let those be the two focal points as the hips go up and the spine stretches down. And that's all because of the resistance with the feet at the wall. So let's use our time wisely towards the final spinal. I know there's a lot of things we could add in for hip But let's focus on the bones here for a few moments. So we try to emphasize the lift and lower. And next time, when you feel that lift of the, well, it's not necessarily that I feel a lift, I'm using my muscles to create that. Okay, good work. So lower the spine, move your knees to your chest, take the ball out, and then we do need one more block. Okay, so take a block, place your feet to the wall, and then lift up your hips and slide the block under the back of your pelvis. It could be the low height, it could be the mid height, and for some of us, it could be the high height. Now, if you decide you're going to go up with the high height, I would recommend that you're going to go without the blanket. You could have just a really low blanket, slide it and unroll it so it's very flat. And you bring your feet up high at the wall. And then you can get that lift. It's just a little easier for the whole spine. If you're going to try that you have less pressure pushing your head up because that will decrease the angle. It's all about just the architecture here. And then you can either keep your feet at the wall, whatever height you chose under your sacrum, or you can put your feet on the ground next to the wall. Yeah, I look forward to this version because the movement of the kidneys, right? It's a little bit of a kidney dose of circulation, stimulating the function. And it's quite obvious, right, where it presses. The muscles push into the area of the low back of the waist, and the arms go in towards the sides. If you have second height of your block, it might work well too to have this version. If the high block is just too much right now, you can also stack 2 flat blocks. So stay in the pose right now. Those of you that are kind of challenged with this height, what you can also do is put 2 blocks flat, right? Well, they have to be stacked. And then I lower down on that, and then I bring my feet down. And that's pretty satisfying because it's wider, doesn't push up into my back. It's not really any discomfort at all with that. But it's to each his own, okay? So when you get a feel of this hip flexor open, center the weight. And you let a few more moments be, feeling your body, feeling the traction. The circulation to the face and the throat. Now you'll notice that the back is going to go 2 directions to complete the session. So when you step your feet up to the wall, you let your feet just push about 70% of your maximum. And then lift a little bit, slide the blocks away, take them away from your pose, and then lower the spine slowly. Carefully roll to the side. Take it easy, let your spine ease up, and then take the bolster to the wall. And if this feels like you can sit up next to the wall, you're going to come to sit your seat to the wall itself, your actual sitting bones. And you'll roll on that shoulder and swing the legs up, 2 legs up the wall. Okay? So get a feel for how close you are. Sometimes I'm not that close and I just adjust my bolster back from the wall, like just a tiny bit, and then I'm comfortable with it. Blanket underhead. Could be flat, it could be a little bit higher, right? You decide. It's comfortable for your neck. It's okay to just move it to where it's comfortable. But do recognize that if you have too much roundedness in your neck, it's just not going to be great for your posture in your neck. It's not going to be good for our spine. We don't want it to wedge. We don't want wedge formations there. So take a sandbag, place it on the soles of your feet, let your feet lift up and rest at the wall. And greet the end of your practice here. See if you can spend the focal point of connection with your breath. Let your arms be spatially out. Feel the energy of circulation draining the legs. And resting the organs from gravity's downward pull. So we reverse the gravitational pull on the bones, which tends to cause us to round, right? So this is the opposite of prolapse. Let the abdomen lift and lower with the breath, because you can feel how it has resistance with the diaphragm, the respiratory muscle that's here right in the center of your body, front and center. And so when you breathe, it naturally moves downwards towards the organs, massages the organs. And then as you exhale, they push back onto the diaphragm, right? The diaphragm moves up towards the heart. So feel that operating system of the mid-body. You know, if you feel your feet flexing, let the back of the legs really get that nice sensation of length. Doesn't mean they're trying to stretch further. You can feel their stability at the heel, where it touches the wall. Now feel a little crease at the knees, so bending them, and then shift the feet just away from the wall enough that you now have to kind of push to manage that weight onto them. Right, when they were at the wall, it was a little different drain, and now it's quick, right? It's a little, it speeds up the drainage right through the legs towards the thoracic duct, right? So it has a whole drainage pattern going on when you're upside down, like this. It's good stuff. And then bend through the legs. Do what you need to do to casually move your sand away. So if you like to kind of kick it forward or toss it off, that's fine. Overhead, I'm just trying to be quiet about it so it's not loud. And as you bend through the legs, take it easy with a moment of knees to chest. Roll to the side, let your body carefully roll. You might flow off of the bolster, but come back up to a moment of sitting with your back to the wall. If you push your bolster away from the wall, get it back onto the wall, and then center your hips and your thighs and the spine arch. It's a great arch in the spine. Let your hands rest into your lap and just fulfill the breath. And exhale, bowing into the heart. Namaste.